Stories of Great Christians. From the Department of Broadcasting of the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, we bring you Chapter 3 of The Gospel Singer, the story of Ira Sankey.
Have a look at what I intend to mail today.
It's addressed to Mr. Hugh McCullough, the Secretary of the Treasury.
It's my resignation, Fanny, from government service.
Have you already contacted Mr. Moody?
No, but I'm going to send him a telegram.
That will surprise him.
No, Fanny, it won't surprise Mr. Moody one whit. It's what he's been expecting ever since we met. I had made my decision. I decided to join Mr. Moody in Chicago on faith that the Lord would provide for my needs and the needs of my family. Fanny, my wife, thought it best that I proceed to Chicago alone, look for a suitable place to live, and then bring her and the children. Meanwhile, we would seek to sell our home in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Mr. Moody and I began our work together in the early part of 1871. It was a ministry that would continue for nearly 30 years.
Mr. Sankey, there's a gentleman here to see you. I guess I can vouch for him.
Mr. Sankey, I'm Philip Bliss. Welcome to Chicago.
You're the songwriter, Mr. Bliss.
Yes, I am.
Why, I've heard you sing. I'm delighted to meet you. I can't tell you how much your songs have meant to me and my family. For instance, I am so glad that our Father in heaven
tells of his love in the book he has given.
My children love it. Sing it every chance they can. Jesus loves even me.
Look, I'm going to leave you two for a bit. Good to see you again, Philip.
God bless. Writing that little song was quite remarkable. The tune just came to me. It rarely happens that way.
There's a hymn of yours that, in a large way, helped bring me here to Chicago.
Indeed? Which one?
I gave my life for thee.
Francis Havergal's hymn. I only wrote the music.
You're still composing?
Indeed. In fact, I brought 2 songs for you to review. I hope you can use them. Just happen to have them here with me. Let's move over to the harmonium.
Let me see if I could play them. Let the lower lights be burning. Rather strange title.
Well, it was inspired by something Mr. Moody said.
Really?
He told of a story about a terrible storm on Lake Erie and how the harbor master in Cleveland struggled to keep the harbor lights burning.
The lower lights. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman you may rescue, you may save. I see you wrote both the words and the music.
Yes, and with this one also.
Hold the fort. Your titles are somewhat out of the ordinary, sir.
Were you in the Army, Mr. Sankey?
The Newcastle Regulars.
Pennsylvania?
Lawrence County.
Well, I'm from Rome myself. Clearfield County.
Oh, my comrades, see the signal waving in the sky.
Major Whittle told me this true story about General Sherman. It happened in Georgia, north of Atlanta, at Kennesaw Mountain. General Hood had surrounded General Corse, who was from Illinois, incidentally. Corse raised a flag from the top of the mountain, which Sherman saw 20 miles away, and Sherman sent the message, "Hold the fort, I'm coming."
Hold the fort, for I am coming. Jesus whispers still.
By thy grace we will.
It should make a rousing congregational song. I don't quite see it as a solo.
Give it a try.
I will.
Let's get together from time to time, Mr. Sankey. I work for Root and Cady, the music publishers here in Chicago. I don't travel all the time. Someday you might want something published.
Friends, before we leave, remember what we spoke about tonight. What shall I do with Jesus? I want you to take that question with you. Think it over carefully And next Sunday, come back and tell me what you are going to do with it.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
There seems to be some sort of disturbance outdoors. We are dismissed for tonight. Go in God's love and peace, and perhaps we should all go quickly.
Yes.
It's a fire!
The whole city's
It's a
on
fire!
I shall never forget the date of that Sunday evening service in Farwell Hall. October 8th, 1871. The night the Great Chicago Fire began.
Is everyone out of the building?
Everyone's on their way home, Mr. Moody.
The whole west side of the city seems to be in flames. What happened, I wonder? I heard nearly 4 blocks of the city were destroyed by another fire on Saturday.
I don't like the way the wind is blowing.
Blowing this way, you mean?
Fires whip up winds, and winds carry the flames. That's when things get out of control. I saw that often in the war.
The river will serve as a barrier. We should be safe on this side.
Mr. Moody, I think help is needed on the other side of the river. I'm going to join the firefighters. There may be some way I can help.
Let me go with you, Sankey.
Mr. Moody, sir, if you'll allow me to say so, I think you should go to your family. Who knows how this night will end? My family's still in Pennsylvania. Yours is here. See that they're safe. And then join the volunteers if you're still so inclined. I really think that your place is with your family. I crossed the Chicago River and got to within 2 blocks of where the fire was raging. It was an unbelievable sight. An entire block of wooden buildings was burning. What little water we could muster had no effect whatsoever. We began to tear down the fences, thinking that this might keep the fire from spreading. The wind kept building in intensity.
Watch those embers!
The wind became a near hurricane, picking up the embers and lifting the flames eastward. Building after building caught fire, block after block. We worked for an hour, a dozen of us, rapidly retreating and becoming exhausted from the heat. I was now convinced that the city was doomed. The fire could not be contained, and it was moving toward the center of the city, which meant that Farwell Hall, where I now had a room, was in its path. I decided to follow a sound military strategy in the face of disaster. I decided to retreat. The fire followed us so rapidly that several times I had to shake falling embers from my coat. It was a strange and fearful night. Wagons without drivers, people shouting, fighting, looting. I reached Farwell Hall in time and gathered a few belongings together. And I decided to find a place of greater safety. To my mind, the only remaining safe place was Lake Michigan. I began to walk eastward toward the water. You up there! You're in danger! Get out while you can!
The fire never reaches us up here! We're safe!
Several hundred people would die before this Holocaust could expend itself. Many of them people who thought themselves safe. I passed a building being constructed at the site of what today is the Palmer House, and I placed a suitcase and some packages in what was to be the basement, hoping they would be safe. Farwell Hall was close by, and I returned twice for another suitcase and some personal items. On one trip, I left some things on a doorstep, a home much closer to the lake. When I returned there, so many other persons' belongings had been dumped that I couldn't find any of my things. But that didn't really matter. Not now. I did retrieve the things I had left in the basement of that new building on State Street, and I had to find water. It was so very hot.
Yes?
Could you spare a man a glass of water?
Help yourself behind the house. There's a water tap there.
Oh, thanks. There was no water. The pipes only contained air. It was the first indication that the giant waterworks to the north of the river were no longer functioning. Then the gasworks exploded. There was no water, no light, only chaos. Somehow I reached the waterfront, lugging a trunk, a suitcase, and a bag full of miscellaneous things I thought essential at that strange point in my life. This wasn't really the lake shore. I had thought I could wade into the water and thus be safe from the approaching fire, but at this particular place, there were only rocks and pilings, and water was probably deep. It was adjacent to the railroad track, so the water was also stagnant and unfit to drink. My expected place of safety did not now seem to be all that safe. But then I saw something unexpected.
Sir, may I join you?
Sure, what do you want, man?
Do you own these boats?
Yep, I rent them. Or used to.
Well, would you rent a boat to me right now? I have some things I'd like to put into one.
Rent you a boat?
You mean you won't?
Yeah, just take a boat, any of them. Bring it back if you can, though. No charge.
Somehow I managed to put all of my belongings inside the boat, and I had rowed out as far as I dared, tying the rowboat to some timbers from which a new breakwater was to have been built. The water was much cleaner here, and I chanced to take a drink. I hadn't realized how thoroughly parched I was, and my face and hands were black with soot and felt burned. Buildings were being demolished in the city. I learned later that General Sheridan issued the order thinking the debris would form a barrier against the flames. I sat in that swaying rowboat for nearly a day, watching the sun rise and set, watching the flames progress, and then the hovering haze of smoke. I saw looters marching down the railroad tracks southward, proving again that the heart of man is desperately wicked. I did not know if I'd survive, whether anything was left in the city or whether one could even leave. I was glad that my family was still in Pennsylvania. I didn't know if we could have managed that night. I wondered about Mr. Moody and his family. Our association had certainly been a brief one. 5 months. Did Mr. Bliss survive with his many manuscripts of beautiful songs? And the hundreds of children who attended our Sunday school, what about them? Oh, Heavenly Father, watch over them. What was that song we'd sung in Mr. Moody's Sunday school last Sunday? Last Sunday? That had been only yesterday. Dark is the night, and cold the wind is blowing. Nearer and nearer comes the breaker's roar. Where shall I go? Or whither fly for refuge? Hide me, my Father, till the storm is over. I quickly awakened from my reverie, saw suddenly that the rope that held me to this pier had broken. Somehow its strands had become frayed. The wind and the waves had risen, and immediately my little boat was swept outward, past the breakwater. I grabbed for the oars, struggling to get them set, remembering what I'd heard about the violence of storms on this inland lake. The waves began to crash over me, and I struggled against the wind and current, getting farther and farther from the shore. Some through the fire, some through the flood. I had survived the flames, praise be to God. But would I now survive the waves?
And so we conclude Chapter 3 of The Gospel Singer, the story of Ira Sankey. This is another in the series, Stories of Great Christians, produced by the Department of Broadcasting of the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago.